Siddharth started noticing some odd behavior from his wife, Ishita. She'd often go out during the day without telling him where she was going, and it wasn't to visit her parents. At night, she was glued to her phone, constantly texting or chatting, barely paying attention to him when he tried to talk. Suspicious, Siddharth hired an assistant to look into it. What they found confirmed his worst fears. For 7 days straight, Ishita had been meeting up with the same man. Not only that, but she'd been caught spending time alone with him on multiple occasions. She would sneak off during the day when Siddharth was at work and make sure to be back home before evening, as if nothing had happened. Hey there! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life story that reminds us just how strange and horrifying the world can be. This time, we're headed to Anantapur, a district in Andhra Pradesh, India. Believe it or not, even in this modern age, there are still marriages where parents play the role of matchmakers, often driven by money rather than love. They believe their experience, along with financial stability, is the key to securing happiness for their children. After all, they say love is sweet only in the early days of marriage, right? Well, that's exactly how this story begins. But what happened next? Stick around as we unpack all the shocking details of this case. Let's dive right in. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, if this story grabs your attention, share it with your friends. Now let's get into it. Our story takes us to Anantapur, Andhra Pradesh, India, where Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya live. They're known for being strict parents, raising their 8 children with a firm hand. Mr. Rohit is a retired teacher, and Mrs. Ananya used to work as an administrative officer in the land office. While most of their kids live on their own now, their 2 youngest still live with them. The youngest, Ishita, is 24 and recently graduated college, with plans to pursue a master's degree. But when Ishita shared her dream of continuing her education, her parents shut it down. Despite Mr. Rohit's background as a teacher, he and his wife believed there was no point in girls going to higher education since they'd end up in the kitchen anyway. It wasn't just an offhand remark. There was a reason behind their thinking. Mr. Rohit had recently been introduced by a friend to Siddharth, a wealthy 49-year-old businessman looking for a wife. Siddharth ran a successful fisheries and steel business, served on a political advisory board, and worked for the government in small and medium enterprise development. To Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya, Siddharth seemed like the perfect match for Ishita. They believed he could provide her with a life of financial security and abundance. Sure, he was almost 50, but to them, he was still charming and good-looking. His confidence and energy made him seem younger, and as they put it, he still got plenty of oil in the tank, so kids wouldn't be a problem. Ishita reluctantly agreed to meet Siddharth over dinner. Surprisingly, he was smitten with her and said he'd propose if she was interested. But if she wasn't, he wouldn't pressure her. He understood the age gap might be a lot to accept. Her parents, of course, jumped at the opportunity. They couldn't believe Siddharth had chosen their daughter, and they immediately urged Ishita to say yes. Forget about school for now, they said. Just get married, and if you still want to study later, your husband can pay for it. How often do you get the chance to marry a wealthy businessman, politician, and government official? Ishita hesitated. She already had a boyfriend of 3 years, and she didn't know Siddharth well. Plus, there were rumors about him. Some said he had multiple ex-wives, and others claimed he hadn't even finalized his divorce with one of them. But her parents dismissed her concerns. Don't listen to gossip, they told her. Everything can be worked out. Just go for it before he changes his mind. And so, in May 2017, Ishita married Siddharth in a grand ceremony, despite the 26-year age gap. The wedding was the talk of the town. Many people criticized the Rohit family, calling them greedy and accusing them of selling off their daughter. It wasn't just about the dowry, which reportedly included 2 houses and a piece of land in Mukthapuram. The demands went further. A new car, gold jewelry, monthly cash allowances, and even full healthcare coverage for the family. Meanwhile, Ishita eventually discovered something shocking. Her husband Siddharth still had a wife, Naina, who was 47 years old. Although Naina didn't live with him, she stayed in one of his houses in Dharmavram and was raising their young daughter, who was definitely Siddharth's child. When Ishita confronted Siddharth about how they could even be married if he still had a legal wife, his response was dismissive. He claimed his relationship with Naina wasn't real. According to him, it was more of an informal arrangement because she'd gotten pregnant out of wedlock. He insisted he didn't love Naina but supported her financially for the sake of their child. However, Naina still considered herself Siddharth's legal wife. As it turned out, Siddharth had told Ishita's parents about his complicated marital status before the wedding, but Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya conveniently kept that detail from their daughter. They were worried Ishita would refuse the proposal, and their dreams of a wealthy son-in-law, and all the perks that came with him, would go up in smoke. Instead, they waited until after the wedding to casually inform Ishita that Siddharth technically still had a wife. They brushed it off, telling her not to make a fuss about it. After all, they argued, Ishita was the only legitimate wife in the eyes of society. Naina didn't count, and besides, Siddharth had promised Ishita would be his final wife. But cracks in this perfect arrangement began to show almost immediately. Just 1 month into the marriage, Siddharth was already feeling overwhelmed by Ishita's family. Her parents became increasingly demanding, acting as if their daughter had somehow bewitched Siddharth into doing anything they wanted. Day after day, Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya would come up with outrageous requests for Siddharth to buy them expensive items. Siddharth was taken aback by their behavior. They weren't poor, they had solid pensions and were well educated. He expected them to be refined and dignified, not behaving like beggars. Fortunately, Ishita herself wasn't like that, at least during the first month of marriage. She stayed calm and didn't ask for much, but Siddharth couldn't help but wonder how long that would last. By the second month, Ishita's older brother, Abhinav, got in on the action. Abhinav, 34, was unemployed and living with their parents after his wife left him. She'd gotten fed up with his laziness, womanizing, and abusive behavior. Abhinav, however, seemed unbothered by his situation. Instead, he turned his attention to Siddharth, demanding a motorcycle, a phone, money, and even a house. He justified his demands by claiming it was business capital, but Siddharth wasn't buying it. He had no faith in Abhinav's ability or desire to run a business. The man spent most of his days drinking and chatting with women on dating apps. Frustrated by Siddharth's refusal to fund his lifestyle, Abhinav became hostile. He even went so far as to tell Siddharth he regretted blessing the marriage. "If I'd known you were this stingy, I would have married Ishita off to someone richer," he spat. Abhinav didn't seem to realize just how much he was already milking Siddharth. Though his daily requests were usually small, just enough for food and drinks, they added up quickly. To Siddharth, it felt like a never-ending cycle of entitlement and ungratefulness. Ishita often felt guilty about the way her family treated Siddharth. She'd even say things like, "It's okay if you want to divorce me or leave. I understand if you can't take how they treat you." The truth was, she didn't love Siddharth yet, but she was determined to try. She wanted to be a good wife and believed love could grow with time. Siddharth, however, reassured her. "Don't worry about it," he said. "Take it easy. We'll deal with your parents and your brother slowly." Ishita even encouraged him to stand up to her family's demands. She hated seeing her parents treat her like a money tree. "Marriage should be about love and happiness," she told him. "But instead, it feels like they sold me off." Despite her frustration, Ishita's parents didn't care. When she confronted her mother, Mrs. Ananya brushed it off, saying it was a chance to make the most of the situation. Her father, Mr. Rohit, took it even further. Whenever Ishita tried to set boundaries, he would pretend to be sick and guilt her by saying, "If you don't do what we ask, it'll kill me." The emotional manipulation only made things worse. By late September 2018, Siddharth started noticing changes in Ishita. She would leave the house during the day without telling him where she was going. At night, she was constantly on her phone, either chatting or taking calls, ignoring him completely. Feeling uneasy, Siddharth hired an assistant to look into it. The results shocked him. For 7 days straight, Ishita had been meeting up with the same man. Worse, she had even spent time alone with him in a rented room during the day while Siddharth was at work, always making sure to return home before evening. Furious, Siddharth confronted her parents and even showed Mr. Rohit photographic evidence of Ishita with another man. He made it clear, if Ishita didn't stop sneaking around, everything he had given their family, houses, land, money, and luxury items, would be taken back. Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya were horrified. They immediately called Ishita to a meeting to discuss the situation. Under pressure, Ishita confessed. She admitted she still had feelings for her ex-boyfriend, Akshay, a 30-year-old man she had been secretly seeing. She explained that her heart couldn't let go, even though she had married Siddharth out of obligation to her parents. Akshay, however, knew his limits. He hadn't fought for Ishita because Mr. Rohit had made it clear that he disapproved of him. To her parents, Akshay wasn't good enough. His job was unstable, his salary was low, and he always showed up in shabby clothes and on an old, beat-up motorcycle. When Mr. Rohit once visited Akshay's tiny rented room, he declared it unfit for his daughter. There was no way they'd ever give their blessing. Despite their love for each other, Ishita and Akshay had been forced to part ways. When her parents arranged her marriage to Siddharth, Ishita reluctantly agreed, believing she had no choice. But after being confronted by her husband and family, she broke things off with Akshay for good. She went home to Siddharth, apologized, and promised to be faithful and work on their marriage. However, tensions didn't end there. In October 2018, Siddharth's first wife, Naina, showed up at their house, furious about a new financial arrangement. Siddharth had reduced Naina's monthly allowance while keeping the amount for their daughter unchanged. She blamed Ishita for the changes, even though the decision was entirely Siddharth's. Naina's frustration grew, fueled by rumors about Ishita's family being greedy and demanding. The following day, while Siddharth was away, Naina returned and lashed out. In a fit of rage, she physically attacked Ishita, venting all her anger on the younger woman. Later that evening, when Siddharth got home, he wasted no time. He took Ishita to file a police report for assault. Naina was arrested and sentenced to 3 months in jail but was released on bail. However, the court issued a strict order. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere near Ishita again. Not long after that, Ishita's brother, Abhinav, showed up at Siddharth's house, waving an agreement he wanted him to sign. The demand? Siddharth had to cough up a huge amount of money within 72 hours to fund Abhinav's trip to Bellary. If he didn't, Abhinav threatened, Siddharth would have to divorce Ishita. Abhinav ranted about how he'd been cheated, saying, "I gave my beautiful sister to you, a so-called businessman, politician, and official. But when it comes to money, you're so stingy. Sign the agreement right now." Siddharth wasn't having any of it. "You think I'm a fool?" he shot back. "If you want business capital or money to move somewhere, submit a proper proposal. Don't act like a beggar, showing up empty-handed and demanding cash." Then Siddharth dropped a bombshell. "Take your sister back if you think I'm such a bad deal. Return everything I've given to your family, every last gift, or I'll report your parents for extortion. And if you're curious, ask your sister. I've never even touched her in bed." This threw Rohit's family into chaos. Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya turned their anger on Abhinav, blaming him for stirring up trouble. But just 2 days later, the situation escalated even further. Ishita disappeared. Word got out that she had run off to Bellary with her ex-boyfriend, Akshay, leaving her parents scrambling to figure out what to do. Siddharth didn't seem fazed. In fact, he was done. He told Ishita's parents, "If she doesn't come back in 2 days, return every gift I've given your family, even down to the smallest thing. If you don't, I'll file a fraud report. Your daughter ran off with another man, and that's not on me." This sent Mr. Rohit into full panic mode. When he finally managed to reach Ishita by phone, he broke down, crying and claiming her actions had caused him a heart attack. Reluctantly, Ishita returned to Siddharth's house and begged for forgiveness. But Siddharth wasn't feeling generous. Instead, He told his assistant to lock Ishita in a storage room on his property for 2 days. She was confined to the shed, locked from the outside. While this was happening, Siddharth left for Mukthapuram for work. 2 days later, Mr. Rohit, unable to contact his daughter again, showed up at Siddharth's house. He found only the house staff there, who eventually showed him the storage room where Ishita was being held. What he saw horrified him. Ishita was weak, pale, and barely conscious. She hadn't been given food or water for over 24 hours and claimed she'd been beaten by Siddharth's assistant and Siddharth himself. Mr. Rohit immediately called the police, who broke into the storage room and rescued Ishita. Within 2 days, Siddharth was arrested in Mukthapuram on charges of kidnapping and torturing his own wife. During the trial, Siddharth didn't deny the allegations about ordering his assistant to lock Ishita in a shed. Frankly, he was exhausted by all the drama her family had brought into his life. Siddharth explained that he'd married Ishita because, as an official and politician, he was constantly asked at meetings, "Where's your wife? Where's the official's mother?" When he met the beautiful Ishita, he thought she was the perfect solution. Sure, her family was wealthy, but that didn't bother him. He thought giving them 2 houses and a piece of land would be enough to keep everyone happy. But he was wrong. The demands never stopped. They wanted this, they wanted that, things Siddharth himself didn't even have. And don't even get him started on Ishita's brother, Abhinav. The unemployed man was constantly scheming to get hundreds of thousands from Siddharth. "If I give him money once," Siddharth said, "he'll just keep coming back for more. That's the kind of person he is, a thug in disguise." Siddharth refused to give in. "He's young and strong," he said in frustration. "He should get a job instead of begging and exploiting his sister's marriage." And then there was Ishita herself. She never wanted to be intimate, which left Siddharth feeling rejected and constantly stressed. The final straw was when she ran off with her ex-boyfriend, Akshay. News of the scandal spread fast, even reaching Siddharth's colleagues, leaving him humiliated. By the time Ishita returned, Siddharth was done. He didn't care anymore. He told his assistant, "Lock her up in the shed out back. Let her feel the consequences of her actions. She's married but still runs off with another man. No self-respect at all." Then, without a second thought, Siddharth left for Mukthapuram on business. The police later arrested his assistant, Vavan, a 44-year-old who admitted he was just following orders. The cleaner at Siddharth's house wasn't detained since she didn't have access to the locked shed and couldn't intervene. She admitted to hearing screams and almost calling the police, but fear held her back. It wasn't until Ishita's father arrived and discovered someone locked in the shed that the truth came to light. In March 2019, the Anantapur District Court found Siddharth guilty of assaulting his wife and sentenced him to 1 year in prison. His assistant, Vavan, received a 3-month sentence but was released after serving 4 months on bail with a mandatory reporting requirement. After the case, Siddharth divorced Ishita but didn't stop there. He countersued her and Akshay for adultery, pointing out that Ishita had run away with another man while still married to him. In August 2019, the court sentenced both Ishita and Akshay to 12 weeks in jail for their actions. Once they were released, the two got married. In the end, it seemed like the biggest winners were Ishita's parents, Mr. Rohit and Mrs. Ananya. They kept all the money and property Siddharth had given them and walked away without facing any consequences. Siddharth, on the other hand, left the ordeal tired, humiliated, and significantly lighter in the wallet. What lessons can we learn from this story?